So after my last RICO TikTok about the one-man RICO, I got a lot of questions, and I think I still have a little bit of confusion. So I figured this is the perfect time to talk to you about the jury instructions for the RICO charges. I might do the other ones later, but I think this one is important to kind of get it out there, maybe clear it up finally. Now keep in mind, I'm a defense attorney. None of this is saying that I think the government has already won their case or the trial is over. We're just finishing, I think, about 4 weeks of trial. What was originally supposed to be 8 weeks, but the prosecution has said that they may finish a little bit early because they had a schedule and they're missing one of their victims. So a lot is still up in the air, and for right now, we don't know what's going to happen. But here's the thing. 24 witnesses have taken the stand so far, and people are still struggling to connect the dots over why this is RICO, especially when you're looking at it as a one-man RICO. And I get it. It's hard to understand unless you've actually been in the courtroom. It might be even harder. So that's why I want to break it down so everybody can kind of see how it goes jury instruction-wise. For those of you who have never been a part of a trial, at the end of the trial, both the prosecution and the defense are going to rely heavily on those instructions that the judge gives to the jury. This is one of the most powerful tools that we have at the end of a trial because we put them up on the screen and we match the elements to them, or we say what the prosecution hasn't matched. And the jury gets to take those instructions back to the deliberation room and they read them over and over again. At least we hope they do. So what I'm going to go through now is kind of walk you through each one of the jury instructions based on what I was able to piece together on the indictment and the federal models of jury instructions. Now, I've adjusted them a little bit, and a few things might be a little bit off, just for clarity. But these are the closest I think I can get them. And I'll go slide by slide and kind of break them down for you so you can see what we're looking for or what the jury's looking for. So what does the government have to prove, right? That's the biggest thing. They have to prove that Puffy, the defendant, was a person employed by or associated with the enterprise charge, and that enterprise existed as alleged in the indictment. And what's the enterprise? That's Sean Combs, his companies, Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprise, etc., and all the employees and security staff and everybody else that participated, and a lot of other unnamed associates. Secondly, that the enterprise affected in some way interstate commerce. And I think we have that, with the crossing of state lines and money and travel, etc. And that Combs directly or indirectly participated. He doesn't have to have committed the acts himself. He just has to be part of the plan. And that's where you get the RICO. The government also has to prove that a conspiracy involved a pattern of racketeering activity. This means that at least 2 or more serious crimes called predicate acts were committed as part of the enterprise plan. That pattern has to include at least 2 racketeering acts. And here's where we gotta break it down and make it understood where we're getting the RICO. Now, I know this slide is kind of busy, but I was able to pull out at least 8 predicate acts that the prosecution has to prove. And the first one, sex trafficking. That means Puffy used coercion, threats, or fraud to force sex acts for money. And where did we get that from? Cassie, who started it all off, who testified to escorts being flown in for 4-day marathons of freak-offs. You have Jane talking about the same thing. You have Kerry Morgan, Miles Morales, all talking about sex acts, also talking about the violence and everything that goes behind it. And Cherie Hayes, one of the sex workers themselves, actually testifying to the sexual acts that happened at the hotels. The forced labor. That one, obtaining labor or service by force, threats, or abuse of legal or financial power. I think that was pretty much wrapped up in Mia. She talked about being locked in and not being able to leave, talking about working for about 5 days straight with no sleep. You also have some other associates talking about George Kaplan, who used credit cards for the freak-off supplies, and David James as well, talking about his 24-hour shifts. And even Derek Ferguson, who managed the money, talking about the intermingling of personal and business finance, all goes towards the forced labor. The kidnapping. Again, that's Capricorn Clock testified to that, the gunpoint trip to Kid Cudi's house and what happened there. Officer Ignacio testified to seeing a Bad Boy vehicle leaving the scene when he was going to investigate. And of course, again, all intertwined with Cassie's testimony that corroborates a lot of the things that happened with Kid Cudi. But also in the video that we saw where says she was confined in a hotel. And I think it's clear from that video that she wanted to leave and he stopped her from leaving. The arson. Kid Cudi testified to that as well, that he believed that it was Puffy that had something to do with it. Investigator Jimenez talked about the proof of the arson as well. So there was a vehicle that was set in fire, and Cassie again testified that Puffy had something to do with it. The bribing and the witness tampering, we have Israel Flores, who refused to take cash that Puffy tried to give him to hush him up. You have Adi Garcia, who testified that he did take $100,000 for that video and had to sign an NDA to say he wouldn't, that was the only copy of the video that was out there. You even have it on the flip side where Regina Ventura talked about her and Cassie being bribed to get $20,000 in order to put the sex tapes away and not have them come out into the public. The obstruction of justice, I think outside of these three, I think a lot of people testified to how Puffy intimidated, threatening, or misleading another to affect testimony or evidence. And that was throughout this. Several of the witnesses talked about Puffy alleging he would kill them or whatever if they would have testified to some of the things that they saw him do to Cassie, and even some of the things he did when he was trying to intimidate Kid Cudi. The drug distribution, I think that's another one that's pretty much out there. We have all the pictures, even when he was arrested in his hotel room, of all these different pills. George Kaplan talked about the MDMA medicine kits. Mia talked about her Adderall dependence based from Puffy, and Cassie talked about the opioids and her IV recovery based on that. Transportation for illegal sex, I think that we hit that off right in the beginning with the sex workers who talked about they were being paid to fly across state lines to meet with Puffy and Cassie. You have Mia talking about private jet city hops, and Daniel Felix talking about the hotel encounters that happened in the hotels that he was at. So again, final note. The government doesn't have to prove that Gomes personally did all these things, right? That's the key to it. But they have to prove that he knowingly agreed to at least participate in 2 of those 8 predicate acts that he was part of. And that's the key to the RICO charges. If they can get 2 of those in front of the jury to believe that those 2 happened, then based on the jury instructions themselves, he's guilty of RICO. So when you hear people say, this is in RICO, or I don't see how this fits, just remember, there are going to be instructions just like these that are going to be with the jury at the end of the trial, and they're going to take them back into the deliberation room. They will have to match the testimony, the evidence, the exhibits, and the videos to the legal elements. It doesn't matter if they like or dislike Puffy or whether they believe every witness. They'll be told to use what we always say, use your common sense. And they're going to get to judge each witness by their credibility and decide based on the law, not emotion, not celebrity, but just the law. And trust me, those instructions when you're in that jury room carry a lot of weight, right? It's right there in black and white. That's what it's there for. So I hope this helped a little bit more. In my next TikToks, I'll continue answering some of the biggest questions I've been having in my TikTok comments. I really enjoyed this journey on Puffy, and hopefully it continues to go. We have about 2 to 4 more weeks of this, and I'll be back with some more entertaining dialogue on the whole case.